It began for me, just don't count on my hands, 56 years ago, when I was 16 years old. Is that right? Yes, I think I'm 16. In a little classroom in North Wales where I was at school. And we were studying a great work of English literature called Paradise Lost by John Milton. I had always loved poetry for the sound it made and for the effect it had on me physically. And when I had, we read the poem around the class, so I would read a bit, and she would read a bit, and he would read a bit, and my teacher would read, and so on. And when I read passages like this, high on a throne of royal state, which far outshone the wealth of Ormus and of Ind, or where the gorgeous East with richest hand showers on her kings barbaric pearl and gold, Satan exalted sat, by merit raised to that bad eminence. Now that was something that had a physical effect on me, not just a mental effect. I understood what the words meant. My hair stood up, my skin bristled, my heart beat faster, and the blood raced around my veins. It was a physical effect, and I can't say that often enough. Poetry is enchantment, it's magic. It's not a way of saying something, a fancy way of saying something rational. Poetry is enchantment. It's bewitchment. I mention that because the universe that John Milton was describing in Paradise Lost was something that haunted me all my life. And I came back to it in 1993 when I began to write the story of Lyra. At that time I had published some books. I was making a small amount of money, but I wasn't very well known. And this freed me, it gave me a great freedom, because I could write anything I wanted to, and I didn't have any pressure from publishers, from thousands of readers. Nobody had heard of me. So I was able to write whatever I wanted to do. And that's how I began the story. I better stop there so we can... When I finished the original trilogy, His Dark Materials, I thought that was it. It was finished. There was no more story to write. But inevitably, time goes past, and I think about the characters. I was writing about Lyra mainly, of course, and I realized that there is no beginning, no real beginning to a story. Stories have causes which themselves have earlier causes, which go back in time, and they have consequences. Things happen in a story which will develop later on. And I couldn't help thinking about this, extending the story of His Dark Materials both backwards and forwards. So I'll stop there so that you can... The thing is, I could see new characters. I saw the boy Malcolm, who intrigued me very much. I found him extremely interesting. I saw the girl Alice, whom, when I was a teacher, and I was a teacher for about 12 years, a long time ago, I got to know a lot of children. There are difficult children, there are pleasant children, there are angry children, there are kindly children, and the girl Alice in my story is a difficult child. Well, not a child so much, she's about 16. And I was very, very interested in Malcolm and in Alice, and so I wanted to tell a story about them. This story, La Belle Sauvage, is only 6 months old. She can't do very much. She hasn't got much agency, as we say, so somebody has to look after her, and that's why we have Malcolm and Alice. The idea that human beings have a connection with the animal world, of course, is a very old one. Many religions in different parts of the world, in North America, in Siberia, have the idea of a spirit animal, and you need to find out what your spirit animal is. So that's an old idea. There was also the idea from Plato's dialogues of Socrates and his daimon, meaning a sort of guardian angel, a spirit that attends you. So putting those ideas together, I just thought of the demon, and it was a very lucky thought, an invention, because it gives Lyra someone to talk to. That's the important thing. She's not just alone. I can not only describe what she's thinking, but what she actually says, and what the demon says in response. So you can have a relationship developing, a character developing, and learning from itself. It was interesting to look at my home city, Oxford, where this story is set, for the most part, in this new story, because whereas Lyra, in his Dark Materials, lived among the scholars in the university, lived a life of privilege in some ways, of ritual and love. Malcolm is a working class boy, and the view he has of Oxford is a very different one. What's more, he has a boat, a little canoe called La Belle Sauvage, and on this he's able to paddle about through the city of Oxford, which is full of water, rivers, canals, streams, and later in the book, of course, there's a gigantic flood. So the boat and the water, the level of the water, is very important in the story. We see things from a different viewpoint. It's the viewpoint of a working class boy on the water. I could have brought my alethiometer here to show you, but it's a bit heavy for my luggage. I wanted to, it was necessary for the story for Lyra to know certain things that she didn't know. I'm not putting that very clearly. What I mean is Lyra needed to know things, and it was hard for me to get this knowledge to her. So I invented this little machine to tell her things. So it's a way out of a narrative difficulty in one sense. But also because it uses ancient symbolism, going back to the magic of the Renaissance, I was able to suggest a lot of other ideas that I wanted to put in. The earlier ideas of the universe and how it fits together. The influences from the universe, from the planets, from the stars, from the Earth itself. It was a way of suggesting all these things. So I invented the alethiometer, and as I say, I've left mine at home. Malcolm is a different kind of person from Lyra. Lyra's childhood was very difficult. She thought she was orphaned. In fact, her parents were alive and she didn't know who they were. She was brought up in circumstances of some wealth and grandeur, but she liked running around the streets with her friends from the town. Malcolm's childhood was very different. My French publisher said to me I'd given a picture of a perfect childhood for Malcolm, and I think that's probably true. He lives with his parents. They own an inn by the river in Oxford. He's a happy child. He's very curious. He's very interested in things. He's very kindly. He's a boy whose impulses are good, are generous. And when he sees Lyra for the first time, this little baby, he's an only child. He's never seen a baby before. He's immediately struck by how precious and how perfect she is. And he wants to look after her. So when circumstances of danger arise, he's the first one, the only one, first to look after her and protect her. So I wanted to give a picture of someone who was like that, and who was, but who was also young. You see, he's no older than Lyra was in the first book, in the Northern Lights. So he's different, but in a similar situation. A young person suddenly put into a situation of danger and having to deal with it.